In the vast emptiness of space, where time holds no meaning, a routine mission transforms into humanity's greatest nightmare. Deep within the asteroid belt, a team of explorers uncovers something that should have remained buried. Ancient artifacts, pulsating with forbidden knowledge, awaken forces beyond comprehension. As the darkness spreads, the line between human and cosmic horror blurs. What was meant to be a scientific breakthrough becomes a desperate fight for survival against an entity that defies all understanding. Subscribe now to witness the chilling tale of how curiosity can unleash the ultimate terror from the depths of space. The spacecraft drifted silently through the asteroid belt, its powerful engines dormant as it entered the designated survey zone. The mission had begun as just another routine exploration, one of many conducted by the United Space Exploration Corps. The target, designated asteroid KX 427, appeared unremarkable at first glance, just another chunk of rock floating aimlessly through the void. However, recent scans had detected unusual energy signatures emanating from beneath its surface, anomalies that couldn't be explained by natural phenomena alone. The crew consisted of 5 highly trained specialists, each chosen for their expertise in various scientific fields. Their excitement was palpable as they prepared to deploy the advanced drilling equipment, unaware that their discovery would challenge everything they knew about the universe and their place within it. The asteroid itself was a jagged, irregular mass, its surface pockmarked with craters and streaked with veins of metallic ore. From a distance, it looked like countless others scattered throughout the belt, but the data streaming back to mission control suggested otherwise. Subtle fluctuations in gravitational readings hinted at a dense core, while infrared sensors picked up faint traces of heat inexplicably radiating from deep within. These anomalies were what had drawn the attention of scientists back on Earth, prompting the deployment of this elite team. The mission was straightforward on paper: drill into the asteroid's crust, collect samples, and analyze them for potential resources or scientific value. But as the crew approached the designated landing site, an uneasy tension began to settle over the ship, though none could articulate why. The silence of space seemed heavier here, as if the asteroid exuded an aura of foreboding. The crew worked diligently, their movements precise and mechanical, yet the weight of the unknown pressed upon them. Each member of the team felt it differently. Some dismissed it as nerves, others as the psychological toll of prolonged isolation, but none could deny the creeping sense that they were being watched. As the drilling operation commenced, the asteroid's surface revealed its secrets layer by layer. The initial samples appeared ordinary, but deeper excavation uncovered formations that defied geological explanation. Crystalline structures, impossibly complex and arranged in precise geometric patterns, emerged from the rocky matrix. These weren't naturally occurring formations. Their symmetry and intricate design suggested deliberate creation. The crystals pulsed faintly with an inner light, casting eerie shadows across the cavern walls as the team's helmet-mounted lamps illuminated the chamber. Dr. Elena Marquez, the mission's lead geologist, examined the structures closely, her gloved hands trembling slightly as she brushed away loose debris. She had seen similar patterns before in ancient ruins on Earth, but never in a celestial body. The implications were staggering. If these were indeed artificial constructs, they predated human civilization by millions of years. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more improbable than the last. Could this be evidence of extraterrestrial life? Or was it something even stranger, something beyond the boundaries of known science? Meanwhile, Dr. Raj Patel, the team's astrophysicist, monitored the energy readings from the artifacts. His instruments registered fluctuations that matched no known phenomenon, oscillating frequencies that seemed almost alive. He couldn't shake the feeling that the crystals were reacting to their presence, as if aware of their intrusion. The thought sent a chill down his spine, but he pushed it aside, focusing instead on recording every detail for later analysis. Unbeknownst to the crew, their actions were triggering something far older and more dangerous than they could comprehend. Deep within the asteroid's core, dormant mechanisms stirred, awakened by the vibrations of their drilling equipment. Ancient circuits, long silent, began to hum with power, drawing energy from sources unknown. The artifacts were not merely relics of a forgotten age, they were keys, designed to unlock something best left undisturbed. The team's excitement grew as they uncovered more of the crystalline network, spreading across the cavern like the roots of some vast, subterranean tree. Each new discovery brought fresh questions, but also a mounting sense of unease. The air inside the cavern felt charged, electric, as if the very fabric of reality was shifting around them. None dared voice their fears aloud, but the shared glances between crew members spoke volumes. Hours turned into days as the team delved deeper into the asteroid's labyrinthine interior. The crystalline structures grew denser, their luminescence intensifying until the chamber was bathed in an otherworldly glow. Dr. Marquez theorized that the formations might serve as conduits for some form of energy transmission, possibly linking the asteroid to other locations in the cosmos. Her hypothesis gained traction when Dr. Patel detected faint signals emanating from the crystals, patterns too complex to be random noise. Captain Marcus Hale, the mission commander, maintained a cautious optimism, though his instincts screamed at him to abort the operation. He had spent decades navigating the perils of space exploration, and experience had taught him to trust his gut. Yet the allure of discovery was too great to resist. Every scan, every measurement, hinted at a breakthrough that could redefine humanity's understanding of the universe. To turn back now would be to abandon the chance of a lifetime. But the deeper they ventured, the more the environment seemed to resist their presence. Equipment malfunctions became frequent, as if the asteroid itself was sabotaging their efforts. Sensors gave erratic readings, communication devices crackled with static, and even the ship's AI systems began behaving erratically. At first, the crew attributed these anomalies to environmental factors, a magnetic field, perhaps, or interference from the asteroid's core. But as the issues escalated, doubts crept in. Was it possible that the asteroid was alive, or at least home to some form of consciousness? Dr. Patel's research took a darker turn when he discovered that the energy signatures matched those of theoretical quantum entanglement fields. If his calculations were correct, the artifacts were not only transmitting signals but also creating connections across vast distances, potentially bridging dimensions. The implications were both thrilling and terrifying. Could they be witnessing the remnants of an ancient civilization capable of manipulating the very fabric of space-time? Or had they stumbled upon something far more sinister, a gateway to realms better left unexplored? The crew's growing unease reached a breaking point when they encountered the central chamber. It was unlike anything they had seen before, a massive cavern filled with towering spires of crystal that stretched toward the ceiling like frozen lightning bolts. At the heart of the chamber stood a monolithic structure, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to shift and writhe under the light of their headlamps. The air was thick with an oppressive energy, making it difficult to breathe despite their oxygen supplies. Dr. Marquez approached the monolith cautiously, her scientific curiosity warring with a primal instinct to flee. She extended a scanner toward the surface, but before she could take a reading, the symbols began to glow, pulsing in sync with the crystals surrounding them. A low hum filled the chamber, resonating through the floor and vibrating in their chests. The sensation was both awe-inspiring and deeply unsettling, as if the asteroid itself was speaking to them in a language they couldn't understand. Captain Hale ordered everyone to retreat to a safe distance, but the hum grew louder, drowning out his voice. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and cracks began to form in the chamber walls, releasing plumes of dust and gas. Despite his command, no one moved. They were transfixed by the spectacle unfolding before them. The monolith's glow intensified, bathing the chamber in a blinding light that forced them to shield their eyes. When the light finally dimmed, the crew found themselves standing in silence, their hearts pounding in unison. The monolith had changed. Its surface was now smooth and reflective, mirroring their stunned expressions. But something was wrong. Their reflections didn't match their movements. Instead, they twisted and contorted, forming grotesque shapes that seemed to leer back at them. Panic set in as the crew realized the true nature of their discovery. The monolith wasn't just an artifact. It was a portal, a gateway to something unimaginable. The reflections they saw weren't distortions but glimpses of entities watching them from the other side. Shapes began to emerge from the mirrored surface, dark tendrils that slithered outward like probing fingers. They moved with unnatural speed, wrapping around the edges of the chamber and embedding themselves in the walls. Dr. Patel scrambled to record the phenomenon, his hands shaking as he operated his equipment. The data pouring in was incomprehensible, defying all known laws of physics. The entities existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, their form shifting between solid matter and pure energy. They were intelligent, adaptive, and unmistakably hostile. Captain Hale barked orders, snapping the team out of their paralysis. They needed to seal the portal before it fully opened, but none of their tools had any effect on the monolith. The tendrils continued to spread, consuming everything they touched. Metal corroded, stone crumbled, and the air grew colder with each passing second. Dr. Marquez noticed something peculiar about the symbols on the monolith. They weren't static images but dynamic sequences, changing in response to external stimuli. She hypothesized that they functioned as a code, a mechanism for controlling the portal. If she could decipher it, there might still be a chance to close it. But time was running out. Dr. Marquez's hands trembled as she traced the shifting symbols on the monolith, her mind racing to decode their meaning. The patterns were unlike any language she had encountered before, fluid, organic, and seemingly aware of her presence. Each time she focused on a sequence, it would shift, as if mocking her attempts to understand. Yet amidst the chaos, she began to notice recurring motifs, spirals that expanded and contracted, fractal-like branches that intertwined, and pulsating dots that seemed to follow a rhythm. It was a language not meant for human comprehension, but she refused to give up. The tendrils spreading from the portal had now enveloped half the chamber, their dark forms writhing like living shadows. The air was thick with an acrid smell, and the temperature continued to plummet. Frost formed on the walls, and the crew's breath came out in visible clouds despite their suits' climate controls. Dr. Patel's instruments went haywire, readings spiking and dropping erratically as the entities exerted their influence over the environment. He frantically tried to recalibrate his equipment, but it was no use. Their technology was powerless against whatever they were facing. Captain Hale stood at the edge of the chamber, his eyes darting between the monolith and the encroaching tendrils. His training hadn't prepared him for this, a situation where brute force or quick thinking couldn't solve the problem. Every instinct told him to retreat, to seal off the chamber and abandon the asteroid. But he knew they couldn't leave without neutralizing the threat. If the portal fully opened, there was no telling what horrors might spill into their reality or how far they could spread. As Dr. Marquez worked, she became increasingly absorbed in the symbols, her focus narrowing to the exclusion of everything else. The rest of the team watched anxiously, torn between hope and despair. Seconds felt like hours as the tendrils crept closer, their movements deliberate and predatory. Suddenly, one of the tendrils lashed out, striking the wall mere meters from where Dr. Patel stood. The impact sent shards of crystalline material flying, forcing him to dive for cover. The tendril recoiled momentarily before resuming its advance, undeterred by the damage it had caused. The crew realized with growing dread that the entities weren't merely expanding, they were testing their surroundings, learning, adapting. Dr. Marquez barely noticed the commotion behind her. Her fingers hovered over the monolith's surface, tracing the symbols with increasing urgency. She had begun to see connections, a logic underlying the chaos. The spirals represented cycles, the branching patterns symbolized growth, and the pulsating dots corresponded to energy flows. It was a cosmic blueprint, a map of creation and destruction woven together in perfect harmony. Her breakthrough came when she identified a sequence that repeated itself across different sections of the monolith. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but once she recognized it, the pattern became clear. This was the key, a command embedded within the language of the artifact. Summoning all her courage, she pressed her palm against the monolith, channeling her understanding into the act. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the entire chamber shuddered violently, and the glowing symbols flared brighter than ever before. The tendrils froze mid-motion, their dark forms quivering as if caught in a sudden wind. A low-pitched resonance filled the air, drowning out all other sounds. The crew exchanged wary glances, unsure whether Dr. Marquez's actions had stabilized the situation or worsened it. The resonance grew louder, reverberating through the crew's bodies and rattling their teeth. The monolith's surface rippled like liquid metal, distorting their reflections until they were unrecognizable. Shapes began to emerge from the mirrored depths, not just tendrils now, but humanoid figures cloaked in shadow. Their features were indistinct, their forms constantly shifting, yet their malevolent intent was unmistakable. Captain Hale barked orders, urging the team to regroup near the exit tunnel. But movement was difficult. The ground beneath them had become unstable, cracking and buckling under the strain of whatever forces were being unleashed. Dust and debris rained down from above, making visibility poor and breathing even harder. Despite the danger, Dr. Marquez remained rooted to the spot, her hands still pressed against the monolith. The shadowy figures stepped forward, their movements unnervingly fluid. They didn't walk so much as glide, their forms dissolving and reforming with each step. One of them reached out toward Dr. Patel, who stumbled backward in terror. Its touch sent a jolt of electricity through his suit, short-circuiting his systems and leaving him sprawled on the ground. Dr. Marquez screamed, her voice echoing through the chamber as she poured every ounce of concentration into the monolith. The symbols responded, shifting rapidly as if acknowledging her input. The resonance peaked, then abruptly ceased, plunging the chamber into silence. For a brief moment, everything stopped, the tendrils, the shadows, the crumbling walls. It was as if the universe itself was holding its breath. When the silence broke, it wasn't with a bang but with a whisper. Faint voices, speaking in a language none of the crew could understand, filled the chamber. The sound was disorienting, coming from all directions at once and overlapping in ways that defied logic. Some of the words sounded familiar, echoes of Earth's ancient tongues distorted beyond recognition. Others were entirely alien, grating and discordant, as if designed to hurt the ears of those who heard them. The shadowy figures paused, tilting their heads as though listening to the whispers. Their forms flickered, becoming translucent. Then solid again. It was as if they were receiving instructions, or perhaps warnings. Whatever the case, their demeanor shifted from aggressive to cautious, their movements slower and more deliberate. Dr. Marquez collapsed to her knees, physically and mentally exhausted from her efforts. Sweat dripped from her brow despite the freezing temperatures, and her hands trembled uncontrollably. Captain Hale rushed to her side, helping her to her feet and guiding her toward the others. "We need to move," he said urgently, his voice barely audible over the whispers. But escape wasn't going to be easy. The tendrils had retracted slightly, retreating back toward the monolith, but the chamber itself was collapsing. Large chunks of rock fell from the ceiling, narrowly missing the crew as they scrambled toward the exit. Behind them, the shadows lingered, watching silently as if debating whether to pursue. The journey back to the ship was a harrowing ordeal. The asteroid's interior had transformed into a death trap, with unstable terrain and pockets of toxic gas forcing the crew to take circuitous routes. Their progress was slow and fraught with peril, each step bringing new challenges. Dr. Patel, still weakened from the Shadow's attack, struggled to keep up, relying on Captain Hale's support to stay upright. Meanwhile, Dr. Marquez clung to consciousness, her mind replaying the events in the chamber over and over. She had done something, she was certain of it, but whether it had been enough to contain the threat remained unclear. The whispers followed them, growing fainter but never disappearing entirely. It was as if the asteroid itself was alive, its consciousness fragmented yet omnipresent. Reaching the surface felt like emerging from a nightmare. The stark contrast between the oppressive darkness of the caverns and the vast emptiness of space was jarring. The ship loomed ahead, its sleek hull battered but intact. Relief washed over the crew as they approached, their exhaustion giving way to determination. They had survived for now. The ship's engines roared to life, their vibrations shaking the hull as the crew prepared for departure. Despite the urgency of their situation, there was a palpable sense of relief in the air. They had survived the asteroid's horrors, or so they thought. Captain Hale stood at the helm, his hands steady on the controls as he guided the vessel away from the surface. Behind them, the asteroid shrank into the distance, its jagged silhouette blending into the endless sea of stars. Yet, the momentary calm was shattered when the ship's sensors began to act erratically. Readings fluctuated wildly, indicating anomalies that shouldn't exist in the vacuum of space. Dr. Patel, still recovering from his encounter with the shadowy entity, scrambled to analyze the data. His face grew pale as he realized the truth. The artifact's influence hadn't been confined to the asteroid. Somehow, traces of their energy had latched onto the ship during their escape. Dr. Marquez sat slumped in her chair, her mind replaying the events in the chamber. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a grave mistake. The symbols on the monolith had responded to her touch, but what if she had misunderstood their meaning? What if she had inadvertently triggered something far worse than the initial threat? Her guilt weighed heavily on her, and she avoided eye contact with the others, knowing they might blame her for their predicament. Captain Hale tried to maintain a sense of order, issuing commands and keeping everyone focused on their tasks. But even he couldn't ignore the growing tension aboard the ship. The whispers that had followed them from the asteroid were now faint but unmistakable, echoing through the corridors like ghostly murmurs. No one dared speak of it aloud, but they all heard it, a haunting reminder that they weren't alone. As the ship drifted further from the asteroid, the crew began to notice subtle changes in their environment. Lights flickered intermittently, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Temperature fluctuations caused condensation to form on surfaces, creating an unsettling dampness that clung to their skin. Even the air seemed heavier, as though the atmosphere itself was resisting their presence. Dr. Patel's analysis revealed that the ship's systems were being disrupted by an unknown energy field emanating from within the vessel. It wasn't external interference, it was coming from somewhere inside. The realization sent a wave of panic through the crew. Had they unknowingly brought a fragment of the artifact aboard? Or worse, had one of the shadowy entities stowed away in their escape? Captain Hale ordered a thorough search of the ship, dividing the team into pairs to cover more ground. Each step felt like a gamble, their footsteps echoing ominously in the narrow corridors. Every corner turned, every hatch opened, carried the potential for discovery and danger. The tension was almost unbearable, compounded by the knowledge that they were trapped in a confined space with an unseen threat. Dr. Marquez volunteered to check the cargo bay, hoping to distract herself from her spiraling thoughts. As she descended the ladder into the dimly lit compartment, she noticed something unusual, a faint glow emanating from one of the storage crates. Her heart raced as she approached, her hand trembling as she reached for the latch. Inside, she found a shard of crystalline material, identical to the structures they had encountered on the asteroid. It pulsed rhythmically, as if alive, and she instinctively knew it was the source of the disturbances. The shard's discovery confirmed their worst fears. They had inadvertently carried a piece of the artifact with them. Dr. Marquez carefully sealed the crate and alerted the rest of the crew, her voice strained with guilt. She explained how the shard must have adhered to their equipment during their hasty retreat, embedding itself in the ship's systems and spreading its influence. Captain Hale convened an emergency meeting in the cockpit, where the crew debated their options. Destroying the shard seemed like the obvious solution, but none of their tools could penetrate its surface. It was impervious to cutting lasers, drills, and even high-temperature torches. The shard resisted all attempts to neutralize it, its resilience defying logic. Dr. Patel proposed using the ship's containment unit, designed for hazardous materials, to isolate the shard. While not a permanent solution, it might buy them time to formulate a plan. The crew worked quickly, transferring the shard into the reinforced chamber and sealing it shut. For a brief moment, the ship's systems stabilized and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. But the respite was short-lived. Within minutes, the containment unit began to vibrate violently, its metal walls groaning under immense pressure. The shard's glow intensified, pulsating faster and brighter until it filled the entire chamber with blinding light. Then, without warning, the vibration ceased and the light dimmed, but the shard was no longer alone. A dark, amorphous shape had formed around it, writhing and twisting like smoke caught in a vortex. The crew watched in horror as the shadowy mass expanded, pressing against the containment unit's walls. Its movements were fluid yet unnatural, evoking a sense of primal dread that none of them could articulate. It was as if the entity was testing the boundaries of its prison, searching for weaknesses to exploit. Captain Hale ordered everyone to retreat to the cockpit, sealing off the affected section of the ship. He activated the emergency protocols, flooding the area with fire suppressants and cutting power to non-essential systems. The goal was to starve the entity of energy, but it seemed unaffected, continuing to grow and adapt despite their efforts. Dr. Marquez suggested reversing the process she had initiated on the asteroid. If she could recreate the sequence of symbols that had temporarily stabilized the portal, perhaps she could contain the entity aboard the ship. It was a risky proposition. Failure could result in catastrophic consequences, but they had no other viable options. Using the ship's holographic interface, she began reconstructing the patterns from memory, her hands moving with practiced precision. The crew held their breath as the symbols took shape, glowing faintly in the dimly lit cockpit. When the final sequence was complete, the ship shuddered violently and the lights flickered. For a moment, everything went dark. When the lights returned, the entity was gone, or so it seemed. The containment unit lay empty, its walls scorched and warped as if subjected to extreme heat. Relief washed over the crew, but it was short-lived. As they began to relax, subtle signs of the entity's presence reappeared. Shadows moved independently of light sources, and the whispers returned, louder and more insistent than before. Dr. Marquez realized with mounting horror that the entity hadn't been destroyed, it had dispersed, integrating itself into the ship's systems. It was everywhere now, lurking in the wiring, the vents, the very fabric of their vessel. Their attempts to contain it had only made it stronger, more pervasive. Captain Hale made the difficult decision to send out a distress signal, hoping that help would arrive before it was too late. As the message transmitted into the void, the crew braced themselves for the unknown. They didn't know if rescue would come in time, or if anyone else understood the magnitude of the threat they faced. In the reflection of a viewport, a shadow moved, an echo of the entities they had left behind. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, silently acknowledging the truth. They might never truly escape. In the vastness of space, humanity's curiosity often leads to discovery, but sometimes it awakens forces best left undisturbed. Subscribe now to uncover more tales of cosmic horror and the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding.